Today, I will be telling you when I almost gave up becoming a technology professional, or when I almost gave up as a technology professional in general, really. And I kind of tricked you a little bit because it's not just going to be one time. This is actually going to be multiple times, if you can believe it. The path of the technologist has not been a straightforward path for me. I'm sure if you are a technologist somewhere out there in the spectrum of IT land, that you yourself in your journey have noticed that it hasn't been a straight path. To become a technologist, it really depends on what part of the industry you want to partake in. I specialize in software development. So, my industry or my section, my sliver of the industry is one in which you enter by three paths, which is that you can be self taught, you can go the college route, so you get your 4 year degree, typically a computer science degree. And third is that you go to a coding boot camp. It's kind of crazy to mention these things now because 2024, even hearing coding boot camp kind of sounds a little outdated, right? But that was the process of getting in. I began learning to code in May of 2019, and I started in free code camp. And at that time, I didn't have any money to go back to university. I had already done a 4 year degree. I didn't have any time or I didn't have any money to pursue a boot camp. And I was living on my own in Los Angeles, working very hard to be able to pay the rent every month. So to me, the only option that I had to be able to actually break into the industry was to learn to code on my own. I was very focused on my goal at that time, which was to become a software engineer. I scheduled the time. I would go to the public library on my off days or on times where I didn't work until later in the afternoon or I only worked early in the morning and just start learning to code. And learning self taught, I didn't know if it was actually possible to be able to transition in to becoming a software engineer because I didn't have a degree. I wasn't very good at understanding corporate America. And I also I didn't go to a boot camp. And by the 6 month of me learning to code on my own, I really felt like I wasn't going anywhere, right? There was a lot of frustration built up because I had dedicated time week in, week out, day in, day out to learn the skill, and I couldn't build anything, right? Like if you put a text editor in front of me, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I wouldn't even know where to start. I wouldn't know what to write. That already was one of the first times where I thought, man, like maybe this technology thing really isn't for me. Like I've been trying to do this thing for 6 months and I honestly don't know, like, should I be more ahead? Should I be more, am I behind? And there was no accurate way for me to measure my performance because the whole the whole aspect or the whole process of programming just was completely foreign to me. So I had no point of reference effectively. It was so hard to spend all that time and not really see any return. I was still broke working as a barback. I couldn't actually code anything. And frankly, I was lost. I had put all that time in and I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what the next step was. I met Tech Chief at that time. Shout out Tech Chief. He's out there somewhere on the internet. And that's when I first got exposed to a professional software engineer. And for the first time in my life, I remember having the question, I'm like, can you even actually do this? Like, can you be somebody with like no background in this trade, learn it, and then become employed? Is that even possible? I remember asking that question. A Tech Chief was the first person to ever tell me that it was possible, right? And ladies and gentlemen, likely gentlemen, I have to say that those words, "it's possible," ignited the motherfucking eye of the tiger in me. I was on fire. I was on fire because I wanted so badly to escape the situation that I was in, being broke, working as a bar back, feeling humiliated and humbled at the same time because I was a service worker, um, carrying all the baggage of all the failures of the past. I went to university. I didn't I didn't make anything of it. In those days, I had tangible amounts of debt that I couldn't cover. Um, and it was just time to change. It was time to change. I wanted something different for my life. I wanted to not be that guy. Like I wanted to have something tangible that I could hold and say, "Hey, you know what? Like I freaking accomplished this. Like this is something that I set my mind to." And despite all the times that I had the door closed on me, despite all the times I was overlooked by teachers, by professors, by people who didn't believe in me, that hey, look, I got this done, right? And when Tech Chief told me that it was possible, I did everything in my heart, in my mind, and in my soul to apply myself to everything that he told me to do so that I could get to a job as a software engineer as quickly as possible. So there's that one time that I'll note there. I almost quit. I almost gave up. I meet somebody who inspires me, and boom, the fire gets ignited, right? Yeah, I would say from then on, for the next 12 months, from the moment that I woke up to the moment that I went to sleep, I only thought about becoming a software engineer. The thought was almost intrusive in everything that I did. I always had to go back to my office, which at the time I've shown images of it before on the channel, was when I started, was a TV dinner stand and a plastic foldable chair. Like a less than $200 Chromebook, right? But I always wanted to go back to my space so that I can spend the 2 hours, usually it was about 2 hours on average a night, getting better at this craft, at this skill. And what was scary is that it was the longest I'd ever given attention to something. Usually I had a tendency to pick something up and drop it around like the ninth month mark. But this took me like so this I didn't give up. I didn't give up on this, and the momentum kept building, and Tech Chief kept mentoring me. So that was like super helpful because I had a point of reference to also gauge my skill set, the quality of how much I was growing, how fast I was growing, where I was behind, where my deficits were. And that led me to push so freaking hard. And by about May of 2020, about almost exactly 1 year after, I was finally at a point where I could start applying for jobs again. Or no, where that was the first time where I could first start applying for jobs. I had a decent an okay portfolio at the time. I started looking at LinkedIn. I started seeing a couple opportunities. I think at that time maybe I'd already taken like a couple interviews as well. Then hits the second big moment where I almost gave up on this whole tech thing. That is when the Kufer 19 hit. And when the Kuf 19 hit, it was crazy because I was in Los Angeles at the time. And God bless everybody who's been affected by those wildfires. And may Jesus Christ protect you in these difficult times and guide you and provide everything that you need in these difficult times. In those days too, there had been wildfires too north of Santa Monica at that time too. And I just remember like just being so stressed out because the city was literally on fire. It seemed like the city was literally on fire. You could see like the smoke coming over because I lived at that time. I lived in the South Bay, which is like south of Santa Monica, And north of Santa Monica, you could see the Palisades, and then you could see kind of the cliffs of like off PCH, kind of like where Malibu would be off to the side there. And over that, you in around that area, that's where you could see like all those the fires, and they would cover they would cover the sky and make like the sun look like bright red, and it was just like so crazy, just like so stressed out because like LA had just been, was on fire. And then two, the freaking uh, the Cooper 18 had come by, and things started to shut down. Businesses started to shut down. There was, I think, martial law for California, so there was like freaking um, what was it? If not, no, not martial law. That's incorrect. It was curfews. There was like curfews established. I remember there was like I would look up online, and there was like tanks in downtown LA and stuff. And I was like, man, I got to get out of the city. Like this thing is like blowing up. And my car had gone broken into, and there all of a sudden, from like one week to another, you just started to see like more homeless people everywhere. I can't explain it, but it was so fast. Like and there's always been homeless people in Los Angeles, but man, like in the 2 years that I had been there, it seemed like overnight the Cooper 18, like it just established so much addition, like it added so many more people on the streets. So I was like, man, this is like really like popping off, and there's like the future seems so uncertain. And I had also just at that time too, I had just gotten back from fixing my car. I had gotten into a car accident that wrecked the front side of my car, and I had spent the last amount of money that I had to fix that, and had to pick up. I had to pick up 3 jobs total to be able to cover the cost of fixing the car, as well as what I would, as well as the cost to cover my overhead every month. So I was just overworked like a maniac, like only being able to I spend maybe like an hour a night coding, and I would get home like super late, and often just like kind of start dozing off as I was like learning to code, because there was no time. There was no time. All the time that I had at that point, I was just making. Like I was just making the time to code. Um, and it was just like, man, it was just a crazy, crazy run. But all those things accumulated, put together, like it really just put me on on a negative spiral essentially. And I really didn't know if I could keep going with this like tech thing. Like there was so many problems that were popping up around me, very near to my life, that I was like, man, it's like I don't know if I could keep doing this, bro. Like all this other shit needs to get addressed. And I recorded it. I remember just documenting it to myself and just being like, "Man, I really don't know if I can do this anymore." Now I pray to God. In those days, man, I mean, I'm sure Christ was looking over me, but I didn't pray. But something, and even in those days, I had a feeling that I was being protected and watched. I couldn't articulate it in the form of of Jesus yet, but that came late. That came much later. But either way, so I had kind of a slap in the face. I kind of did a slap in the face moment. Not literally. I didn't slap myself in the face, but or just splash some cold water and be like, "All right, bro. Like, how are we gonna do this?" Like that moment. And I was like, LA's blown up. It's feeling really, really dangerous. Like, I got to get out of here. This is not going to be a good place to be for the next year. Who would have known too, with everything that happened with Cooper 18, that it was not just going to be like the next year, it was going to be the next couple years. So I believe that it was the right decision to get out of there when I did. And so I leave Los Angeles, and luckily my brother had moved out to Nevada. So I had somebody to actually I had somebody nearby that I can relocate to and stay with. But in order to do that, I had to leave, and I had a bunch of connections at the time in Los Angeles that I literally just had to cut off, because I was like, man, I got to get out of here. I quit all the jobs that I had to essentially commit 110% to going at this like software engineer thing, because I said at that point, it's like, man, I've been at this pretty much for a year now. If I quit now, everything that I've dedicated to it would have been worth for nothing. So I thought that at that time, the best thing for me to do was to continue in the journey, and instead of back down, to commit even more toward it and to sacrifice even more toward it. Well believing truly believing that if I sacrifice more to it, that ultimately the end result would be given to me. So I did. Quit all the jobs, moved to Nevada with X amount of money. I mean, I couldn't have had more than like 5,000 bucks in my bank account, to move in my with my brother. And from then on, I would spend once I moved in with my brother, I rushed out of Los Angeles. I had a month to month, so it was like not that hard to break, but the transition was a little rough. Packed all my stuff in my car, arrived at my brother's house, and pretty much the moment I arrived there, I started hustling my butt off to send out job applications and doing everything that I could to what was I gonna say? To get the first job, which I at that point I had been pursuing for a little. When everything was said and done, when I actually executed the move, by that point it was around I think November 2020. So I had been committed to the process for over a year at that point. And once I moved in with my brother, I started from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. Usually it was somewhere around like 12 on average, like 12 hours. I would either be applying, building a new application, learning lead code, um, or taking interviews. And at that time, the industries, in my opinion, is even more difficult now, because through that effort, I was able to start getting a steady funnel of interviews. Believe it or not, this is over. This is now heading into over 18. This is probably at that point. It's getting somewhere around like 18 months of of learning coding, all that stuff. So I was heading into my second year of being on this journey. So this is a lot of time, man. I mean, it's a lot of time for our time for our generation. So I gave it 18 months, and then I started to get that steady funnel of interviews, but nothing was hitting. I kept missing the interviews. I kept failing on the interviews. And that was extremely, extremely, extremely frustrating because I was starting to get interviews, but I was not able to crack them, right? And this is a multitude. I probably was somewhere around like I think when everything's said and done, it's probably like a total of like 10 interviews that I ended up taking, um, give or take a few. And I was really frustrated. My mentor, tech chief at the time, and he didn't know what to do. Like we didn't know like um how to move forward really, because it was like we had tried everything and I still hadn't cracked it. And I just didn't know if I was going to be able to do it actually. I did at that point that was another time where I almost gave up as a tech professional. Because I kept trying and it wasn't working, it wasn't working. And what really tipped the cup over is that to you, if you are a tech professional, you bring being in front of the monitor for 12 hours a day is agreeably I'd assume you'd agree that it's pretty brutal, right? Like it's brutal work where you might not be working physically so much. The strain occurs in your brain, right? It occurs in your mental, right? Because you are taking on a cognitive load where a mover or a handyman will use their body and they take the load on their body. I'm not saying that they don't require cognitive attention to complete their tasks. I'm saying that a big portion of what they do is physical. The big portion of what we do as developers, as technologists, is highly mental, right? So to us, it's evident that if you're on your screen for 12 hours a day, that's pretty crazy, right? But to people who don't physically, or for people who are outside the industry, they it's very easy to get perceived as you're not doing much, right? Um, and I feel like this is kind of how I was perceived when I was with my brother. God bless my brother, one of the best human beings that I have ever met. Literally, to this day, one of my best friends in my family. I think there was just an honest misunderstanding in this point. I hold nothing against it. We've already talked about it. Ultimately, I have extreme amounts of respect for him. The point I'm trying to mention is that it wasn't evident. I think it seemed like I was just not doing much, right? I was just on my computer all day, and although I was applying to jobs because I was not being successful in being able to acquire the jobs, it started to seem like I was trying to live a pipe dream, right? And I started to get the conversations and the topics of like, "Hey, man, like, maybe you should instead of trying the software engineer thing, maybe you should go work at one of the casinos, or maybe you should pick up a job locally." And all things that were those are reasonable things and suggestions for people to make, especially family members that are concerned for your well-being. However, I wasn't I was I thought I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, "Bro, I'm doing the right thing." I'm like, "I'm trying to apply for these jobs and they're just and they're just not landing. Like, what is going on? Like, I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to get employed and this is not happening. This is not working." And my mentor stopped being able to give me advice on what to do next. It was always it got to a point where like I had exhausted every resource of information that I could. I've squeezed the juice out of every single lemon, and it seemed like nothing was happening. And then this lasts for about February until February. So I moved there in November. This lasts until about February, right? And at that point, I am in total agreement with my brother. I would have I was we had come to a mutual agreement that the best thing for us moving forward to preserve the quality of the relationship of our brother in our brotherhood, that I would leave, right? I myself, I told him, I think this is the best course of action. And what that meant really is that I was not gonna have a place to stay anymore, right? Uh, And that I was just gonna have to figure it out on my own. And it was pretty crazy because I felt like I had given everything to this code thing, to becoming a software engineer. And I was at the end of my rope and the success still wasn't there. So there's another time I almost gave up on becoming a technology professional. Literally, it literally felt like the end. It really did. Um, and I thought maybe it's not worth it anymore. But then that fire, it kept burning. It didn't stop burning. And I started to think about, okay, here are the tangible steps that I could take to keep moving in this journey and get it done. So I started planning, okay, when I move out, like I can go get a job here and then I could keep learning at night and I keep applying at night and I can afford an Airbnb and I can do this and I could do that. And I looked at like my little amount of money and I was like, okay, blah, 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 blah. So I started planning again for how is this going to get done. And not knowing really how long it was gonna take me, I thought it was gonna be a few more months after that, and by that point, I was right at the 22-month mark, so I had been with my brother for 4 months. At the end of that 4 months, I was on my way out, with no job, hadn't made any money for 4 months. It was all crazy, man. But either way, so I started making that plan, and I'm still trying to get interviews in that process, and just to mention too, out of the total amount of applications that I had sent at that point, I was at I think I was at a little over 1,100 applications. So I had sent 1,100 applications, taking around 10 interviews, and toward the end, I get this interview at a startup, right? And I remember taking the interview and sitting there and just because of how much it took me to get to that exact point, I remember just telling myself, "You know what? Whether these accept me or not, whether they offer me this job or not, I'm going to keep going. I'm not gonna stop." And I did one of these. I close my eyes, and I thought to myself, like, F this, like, I'm not gonna stop. And then boom, the Zoom opens up, right? And then on goes the interview. And I think it was something about that attitude that released me from the pressure of succeeding. And I essentially I told myself, it's like, it's not about this interview. It's about the journey, it's about the process. And because of that, I'm going to keep going regardless of the outcome of this interview. And I think that released some sort of tension that I had, probably some sort of desperation that I was walking around with. Because as soon as that was gone, I remember taking that interview, and it was one of the best interviews that I'd done, but also, like, one of the easiest too. Like, I had been scrutinized, uh, I had been scrutinized for my code. I had taken, technical exams. I had, written apps to test my skill or whatever, all the freaking things that like, you do to get filtered out, for technical roles. And those I biffed. Some I was more successful in than others, but in the end, they resulted in no job. This job, the one I ended up getting hired, there was absolutely no technical screening. And then soon thereafter, I remember the interview closes, and I think to myself, I'm like, "Holy I think I just got that job." Soon thereafter, for the first day of my life, I sign the contract to be a software support engineer. Not exactly a software engineer, but a software support engineer. But to me, I was like, bro, this literally, it has the two words, it just has the extra word in there in the middle. Like, I'll take it. I'll take it, you know? And it was just like the best day of my life. I was like, but it gets to the point where it's cost you so much that your celebration is like, all right, I'm finally done. Like, it's not even like, it's not even like, yeah, we're going party. It's like, holy that was the crazy, like, like a cigar, and just to like, and 2 hours like on the porch, just like reflecting would have been enough for me. And that's really what it felt like. I remember just like when my mentors came to me and they were like, "Bro, you did it, you did it." I was like, "Huh, I'm just glad it's done." Like, it was like that kind of reaction. I was so over it. I was just glad that I had committed to the finish. And really, like, I would say that out of all those, and there's been more. There have been more. There's time after the success. And if you guys are ever interested, I will talk to you about what happens after the success, because I think that that is maybe the most important conversation that I could have with you guys, especially for my finishers and like the people who really, really want it. What happens after the success is very dangerous, because so many more reasons. That if you're ever interested, please let me know in the comment section. I'll make sure to make a video specifically on that. I've tried to address that topic in different angles before in the channel, but I figured, just if we just hit that one point in an entire live stream with what I know now, I think it might be useful. Before I continue and finish out for tonight, I did want to mention that I just released a free tech industry jobs report. The link is in the description box below, as well as in the pinned comment. And this report is designed for technologists like you, so that you have all the information you need to make the next best career choice for you, and not just monetarily, but also insofar as career fulfillment, so that you are working in an environment that is conducive to your goals, not just financially, but also insofar as your lifestyle. The report took a bunch of hours to write and has tons and tons of deep research that I've aggregated into the single report. So it's definitely advantageous to read it. It comes at no cost to you. Just hit the link in the description box and sign up. All you need is your email, and the report will be made immediately available to you. That's it, and back to the rest of the video. Thank you. The big moral, the big takeaway with all the difficult times that I've gone through, and all the times that I almost quit as a technology professional, for this video or for this stream, is to let you know that even in the darkest moments of your journey, even in the moments where it seems like it's over, I'd go in so far as to say that all of that is just test. All right. It's just a test that will tempt you to quit. But if you simply see it as a test, you'll quickly realize that you have options and that this is not the end, that there will always be an action that you can take, plans that you can strategize, and a way to get out of the current circumstance that you're in. It just comes down less about skill, less about talent. It just comes down to your willingness to keep going. If you're able to do that, if you're able to continue on that race, then ultimately the finish line is yours. In a marathon, some people finish the marathon below 3 hours, super fast. Other people finish the marathon 6 hours, right? It's a lot. Sometimes I think they start putting up all the race stuff like at 6 hours, like they stop caring, right? Like, he crossed the finish line, but nobody's there anymore. But the key thing that unifies all those people, whether it took them 2 hours or it takes them 6 hours, is that they finished, right? So even in your lowest moments, the best and only thing really that you have to do in that moment, in those lowest moments, just keep putting the foot forward in the direction of your goal every day with intensity. And it will unfold for you. Maybe not now, maybe not in 2 weeks, maybe not in a few months, maybe not in a few years, but eventually the dam will crack. Eventually, you'll be the last one standing, and the trophy will be in your hands. So, that's the story. If you find this content valuable, take less than 2 seconds out of your day and hit the subscribe button. Much appreciated, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.